Hey friends in the group. Kenya started this yesterday and she said do the damn thing, so I'm doing the damn thing. I'm just going to go through the process of making a rattle with you. I have an Etsy order that I have to get out, and I figured no better way than to show you the process. This is, just give you one of the hides, it's easier to work with. This is deer hide. It's been soaking in RIT dye and it's soaked overnight. I love using deer hide. It's one of my favorites. I've actually used a couple of different hides over the last 3 years of making these, and deer hide is my absolute favorite. It's a little more sturdy. It's a little less pliable, a little less stretchy and rubbery. And it just holds its shape a little bit better. The one problem with deer hide is as it shrinks, one of the things that you're going to notice is there may be some gaps in when you're sewing the rattle. So you want to be mindful of that and maybe put your stitches a little bit closer together. When I use goat hide, I would love to say I absolutely positively, I do not like using goat hide. Using goat hide drives me up a wall. One of the reasons being is goat hide. There we are. Now we're back. My supplier of my deer hide died of COVID back in April. So yeah, I was using a family supply. They kind of went a little crazy, so we're not using that anymore. So what I've got on deer hide is really short supply, so that's why I started moving to using goat hide. I also use cow hide, and cow hide is a pretty much abundant supply too. The cow hide is probably, when it comes to like the realm of the persnickety hides to use, the cow hide is generally very thick, and you need something good to poke the hole through that so that you can work with it. Once you get the holes poked, cowhide is beautiful, but it's thick. I mean, you're talking like the fattiest part of the hide that they're using, and it's kind of hard to scrape down and get thin enough, because just as soon as you think it gets thin enough, the water gets in the hide, and when the water gets in the hide, it thickens that hide and it makes it really difficult to work with. But I love how easy it is to work with after that. So why would you use different hides? A lot of times you're going to use different hides because there's different magic and different shamanic properties that you're trying to put into it. So by using deer hide, you're talking about the gentleness and moving through life and getting through the obstacles with grace. It's the ability to regenerate and being in touch with the mysteries of life. It's talking to the fairy realm, and it's just all about the whole gracefulness of life. Another hide you can use is elk, and I've just started working with elk, so I don't have enough experience to really say whether it's good or bad. It's just different, and it makes a different sound. All the different hides are also going to make different sounds when you are working with them. But elk, when you're using that rattle, it's going to be about stamina, and it's going to be about strength and passion and putting that, and also pacing yourself. I think maybe that's why elk and I don't get along so well yet, because it's about pacing yourself, and I have that Aries tendency of boom, let's go do it, and let's do it now and get it done. Elk demands respect, and it's one of those where you just automatically, this is what it is. Another one of the hides you can use, we just talked about goat. Goat's very rubbery. Goat's a little bit tougher to use. Bison, buffalo, the magic of buffalo and the bison, that's one of those to me. I mean, the elk and the moose and those, you know, it's like that you're bigger than me, so I need to respect you. But the bison, there's that playfulness that you're putting into the rattle. There's that spirit of respect and honor, and bison is all about prosperity. So you're automatically imbuing this with prosperity before you even have a chance to sow it. It's just there. It's about all of us living together in harmony. So it's a very harmonious rattle when you're working with that. And then horse is another one. I can't bring myself to do the horse yet. I have horse hide. I tried, I cried. it was not something I could work with yet. So I've not worked with horse, but of course horse is all about swiftness, and it's about that life and birth and after death and what happens again. It's like the symbol of true power, which is why I wanted it, because I wanted to be able to use that medicine. It's, you know, guarding travelers and that warrior spirit. And I was really excited about using that. I can't do it yet. Moose is a really fun medicine to work with also. It's being able to show off your accomplishments and what you've done in a way that doesn't look braggadocious. It doesn't look like you're, you know, trying to be all show off. It's that fearlessness, and it's clumsy and graceful at the same time. It's, you know, you're expecting one thing to happen, but the exact opposite happens. And that's kind of why I love moose. I do have moose hair that I can use on the rattles for the finished product. But as far as like the hide itself, I have not used that yet. So the first thing that happens is I get the hide when I'm making a rattle, and I let it soak overnight, which is what this happened. If the rattle hide has to be dyed, it soaks usually for 2 nights. And then I go out looking for sticks. And I can be found usually playing with sticks on the ground, or, you know, and usually banging them against something, because you want to make sure when you're making a rattle that you're hitting, that it can withstand that, because you don't want someone to do just a couple of shakes. The next thing you know, the rattle, that just sucks. So I love this stick. This stick was much longer. This was about a 5-foot long stick, and this is all I've got left of it. I have a white oak tree in my mom's yard, and it's one that I've used for a lot of rattles. White oak has that mysterious symbolism to it. It has that strength and that power, but it's also elegance, because white oak is expensive. A lot of people go with like the red oak, but they don't realize that white oak is a little more plentiful. The other thing with white oak is it has a lot more strength than what some of the other oaks do. I have a special knife. People know not to touch my knife. It may not look like much, and it may look like this is just a glorified butter knife. No. I don't know if you can even tell how thin this is. I would love to go get another butter knife just to show you, but this is so thin. And what's great about this is sometimes the bark just doesn't want to let go. Like on this particular stick, the bark did not want to let go. So it's taken a little bit more to fasten it. So this little knife here, I have a little groove I can actually put this in. Little groove right here. You can't really see it. But this knife will fit right in that little groove, and I can just start popping off the bark. And usually once you get a good spot started, you're not going to have to worry too much about fighting with the bark. You just kind of go with what you got and worry about it later. When I first started doing these, I was not even too worried about peeling off the bark. But then I just started liking the way it looked. What I will tell you is it is okay to use a dowel. It is okay to use a nice little thick dowel, even one that you would get at like Walmart in the craft section. But there are, especially if it's something for you, but there are some that get really persnickety about that. If you're going to make a rattle for someone and you're going to use a dowel because it is more readily available, and pine is prosperity. Like seriously, why would you not want to give someone something that's prosperity and abundance? But c'est la vie. The best thing you can do is take some leather or fake leather and cover up the handle so people don't get all about that. So you can do that. And like I said, this is coming along a lot faster than what it normally does, but that's not what I was going to do. What I was actually going to do is show you how I sew up a rattle. I promise you it won't be long. Just wanted to show you some of the best tools that you can have. For the longest time, I fought with needles and trying to get the right needles to sew these. And one of the problems I noticed is that I was breaking needles like nobody's business. Don't do that. Don't have to fight with needles. Don't fuss with the needles. One of the best things you could possibly do would be to get yourself an awl. A-W-L. I call it my pokey pokey. My little pokey pokey friend does half the work for me, because while I'm sitting here trying to fight with a needle, my little pokey pokey friend, and actually breaking needles, look at that. My pokey pokey friend's all the way in there. And what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to push this up as far as it'll go, because what's going to happen is the elasticity in the rattle hide is going to make that shrink. So while I've got this pokey pokeyed all the way in there, By the time I get all the way around, this hole is going to have shrunk. So you want to make it a little bit bigger when you first start. You also want to get it kind of close together. I've never technically measured how closely, but I look at it almost like there's a little like indentation on here, and I sort of measure it like that and then poke the next hole, and then I go all the way around. I usually give myself kind of an idea of where I want the top to be and where I want the bottom to be, because that gives you a really good like starting and stopping point. But try to poke as much as you possibly can. I know you might want to try to double duty yourself just to make life easier and poke 2 at a time. Don't do that to yourself, because you're going to be really tired by the time you finish. And because this is dyed, you may not be able to see it now, you're going to want to wear gloves with this, which is something I should have done, because my hands are going to be all funky colored, and that's going to suck. But it's okay, because nobody's going to see my hands right now but me, so who cares? So we're just going to go all the way around with this and just kind of do that. So when it comes to, I got 2 little holes in there. Let's just go with the needles and show you the needles that I've been using. A lot of people have their own opinions about what needles to use when it comes to rattles. Let me show you one of the needles I bent. I don't know if you can even see how crooked this bugger is. Yeah. What I was doing was I was using really, really, thick gauge needles. And then I was poking into the rattle, and I was taking pliers and pulling it through. And that'll get you tired after a while. So that kind of sucks. And then you also have the problem of bending the needles, which I have a lot of these that I've bent. So with the awl, it's helping a lot. So the needle that I've gotten to where I just love using, and I have a favorite needle, I have a favorite knife, I have a favorite thread. We'll talk about thread here too in just a second. It's kind of a more perfect needle. This guy here has a little bit bigger of an end on him, which makes him kind of cool to work with. A lot of people, because it's a leather, will use these round needles. It really doesn't make that much of a difference. Don't really waste your money on the round needles. You can get those yarn darners, and the yarn needles will work just perfectly and will be a lot less complicated. Plus, you're getting a little bit thicker of a needle, so it's going to hold the hole a little bit more. I have this cute little box that holds my stuff now, because I've learned so much over the last couple of years, and I seem to have lost my favorite needle. Well, isn't that something? Well, I'll have to use a different needle with this one. We're talking about thread. Even thread has its own shamanic signature. And thread, you can use hemp. If you're going to use hemp, what you're going to do is you're going to want to start like right here in the middle of your heart. When you are rolling it out, roll it out to the very end of your fingers, almost like you would do if you're measuring like a yard of fabric. Then measure it out that much, then go out and do the same thing. So you're going to double this up. Everybody has their own way of doing this. Some people use the sinew. This is the easiest way that I've found, and it's makes me able to make these more cost effective for people. So I just kind of roll this out. I will soak this a little bit, because after working with this and pulling this through, next thing you know, the hemp is deciding, I don't really want to work with you now. And you don't want it to do that. So you just kind of get a little bit wet. Most of the time, these little cups, these Talenti cups work really, really good for getting your hides wet and soaking your hides overnight. I have this little kit that I bought off of eBay, and it has like leather color daubers that I've never used in my life. I have 3 different awls in here. 2 of them are broken. They sent me with this waxed cord. I love this waxed cord. This makes my life so much easier. It slides through the holes a lot easier. It's just so much better. When people buy the rattles from me, one of the things that they ask for is it to have certain magic or certain, energy in it, certain medicine. And this one here that I'm working on, she wants crow. So what I'm going to do is try to keep the thread and keep everything as monochromatic as possible, because I'm channeling a lot of the energy from her because she's giving this as a gift. Like I said, this waxed cord is absolutely gorgeous, and it's so just, first time I use this stuff, it's like, ooh. They do make synthetic sinew, which you can use if you are vegan or just opposed to using animal products. A lot of people with rattles, they will do things like use the gourd rattles, which work really well. I haven't had a whole lot of good experience with the gourd rattles. With most of the gourd ones, what you can do is let them dry out to the point to where all you hear inside is the seed shaking around. But that just, it's a little more of a subtle shaker than what I like. So I kind of go for the big guns, and I go for the animal hides. I do have faux alligator hide. It's completely synthetic alligator, but it's really thick, so I haven't used it as rattle hide, but I think I might try just to see what it comes up with. So I'm doubling up the thread, tying it twice, and then tying it again. So this waxed thread makes quick work of what I'm trying to do. And then find my starting point, and then decide, do you want the thread to be, the starting of the thread to be out or in? And then you just go from there. So what I'm going to do is just poke holes and then sew this, and that's